on your drug cases, again, the FBI is not setting policy, they're carrying out policy. But do you have any concerns? I don't know if you're familiar with Colorado politics, but for instance, our legislature is dealing with medical marijuana rules right now, and yet the DEA came in and raided someone for growing medical marijuana. So do you have any concerns about the federalism issue? Do you think that the federal government is overreaching relative to what the powers that the states should retain?
There might be some instances where it would appear that were the trend, but the federal government only responds to what the legislative powers that they have been given. They can't go beyond that. They can't go beyond what's actually mandated in legislation. And where it's illegal to have marijuana or to have any other kind of drug, then they have to address it. Now, they address it on different levels. They have Schedule 1 kind of drugs, Schedule 2. They have different drugs. They're categorized differently with different penalties depending upon quantity and type of drug. So it's not just one big classification. It's all broken down.
So critics that I've read are concerned that, as with alcohol prohibition, a great deal of the violence associated with the trade is being caused by the prohibition itself. In other words, that's what's setting the framework for all this gang violence, including south of the border. Having been there, experienced it, seen it on the ground, do you have any of those concerns, or do you think that this, the status quo is how it has to be pursued despite some possible negative consequences?
I think I'd probably go along with the last part. Yeah, I think that we're going to have to kind of go along with the way it is. I don't, for example, I'd be very concerned if marijuana were legalized, just right out, because I think the more available it is, the more it will be abused, the more it will be used and abused. So those are my own feelings. I'm not expressing the church's philosophy, but the philosophy of the church is that we believe in being subject to kings, presidents, rulers, and magistrates, and in honoring, obeying, and sustaining the laws. And if the laws are such that marijuana is restricted, or any other drug is restricted, or any other type of thing might be debatable but is restricted, then we believe in following that law, whatever it might be. In fact, throughout history, it's often been difficult. The history of the Mormon people at times was persecuted people, and yet we always tried to obey the laws, even when they didn't work in our favor, and that's the way it is today.
So, well, you've seen both sides of the drug problem in terms of the enforcement side and the assistance side in terms of trying to help people through their problems. Honestly, seeing individuals involved in both of those efforts, where do you see the most successes coming from? From enforcement or from, say, church intervention helping a person get through some personal struggles?
Both. The church philosophy is that you help everybody that has any kind of a problem, whatever it might be. And I'm talking about the whole gamut of human problems. And the idea is to help, to reconstruct, to rehabilitate, to strengthen those whose arms hang down low because what they're burdened with. Now, the other part of that was.
Yeah, I mean, you had this unique position as being an enforcer,
right,
at the same time as being an assistant.
Right.
So did you find one more useful, and did you ever find that in conflict? For instance, if somebody comes to you and says, look man, I have a drug problem, are you going to arrest them or are you going to put them in counseling?
And this is where it's very difficult for a church leader, because there is a privilege between clergy and the congregant or member of the congregation. And also, of course, as a law enforcement officer, you have to take action when action is necessary. So that's a very, very fine balance, and it's one I never was in that position where I would have to bridge that. However, I have always felt that every human being upon the earth, no matter how bad, no matter what gutter he might be in, no matter what he's done, he's still a child of God. That's my view and the church's view, and I feel that they have worth. God doesn't make junk. So during the day, I would investigate the dregs of our society. During night, during the evenings, I'd go home from work. I go from the office over to from the FBI office to my church office, and I would interview youth about morality issues. I'd make sure that they were staying where they should be morally. I'd try to keep marriages together. So I'd work with the dregs of society during the day, and I had this wonderful elevating experience trying to help people rise above themselves in the evening and help them become better people, to just become a little bit better each day. So that provided a tremendous balance in my life. Often when I talk about it, I have my scriptures here. I have my gun right on top of my scriptures. And I advise people to remember to keep that balance in their lives, keep their spiritual balance along with their professional work. Don't take your work home. Don't take your work home. When you go home, be there for your children, be there for your family, be there for your spouse, and then pick it up the next day. I was 24/7, so if I'm called in the middle of the night, which I was many times, then I have to put on the other hat, and I go out as the FBI agent and do what I had to do. But try to keep balance in your life was very, very important.